Support for the hundreds
comes from Mel Gimp.
From Mel Gimp.
Mel Depp.
Gimp.
Mel Gimp.
More than 2 people around Vernon.
Use a Mel Gimp.
To send hate mail, booty pics,
And deliver incriminating information.
I use a Mel Gimp.
I am a Mel Gimp.
What?
Ugh.
Welcome to the first and last episode of The Hundreds Serial. No relation to Serial, the podcast, the most popular and famous podcast in the world right now. For 2.5 months, we've been sitting in the driveway in our cars for much too long, decreasing work output at our desks, and trying to find anyone we can talk to about this real-life murder case in Baltimore in 1999, where a Korean-American girl was murdered, her convicted ex-boyfriend, and all of the conjecture in between. Downloaded an average of 1.26 million times per episode. And speaking of millions, we have 4 very special guests here today, big Serial fans who've earned the respect for their opinions in their own right. Between everyone here, we have over 60 million records sold.
There's 4,000 more.
60 million
I sold
and
4,000
4,000
records.
Yes.
And when I was 20 years old at Interscope, I sold 4,000 records. I need that to be reflected.
That's right. That's Hot Carl.
That's right.
Jensen Karp is here, writer and owner of Gallery 1988. We also have Natalie Maines, singer, Dixie Chicks, activist. We have Mark Hoppus here with Blink 182, and Jenny Johnson, comedy writer. So the first question I'm gonna get right into, just so we have it right off the bat, what do you guys think? Adnan, guilty or innocent?
Oh, the fluff question first. I mean, who goes first? I mean, I feel like Natalie has the most credibility here. Let's be honest.
Yes.
Finally, a table
Don't
where
tell
I have no credibility.
I mean, if you could, I mean, I feel like I would go off her. I mean, I'd like to hear her first.
Great. I am going to say I'm not 100% sure, but my gut says Adnan is innocent.
Innocent.
Yes.
Interesting.
That's bigger
Okay,
than not
wow, that's
guilty.
the-
Adnan is innocent, okay. Jensen?
I believe that Adnan is guilty. I believe he should have been found innocent in trial due to just a really bad trial.
Yeah. Right.
And a lawyer who sounds like a mess. This lawyer not only...
If I was on the jury, I'd be like, yeah, just to get her to stop talking.
Yeah.
With that voice.
Clearly a gambling problem. Beyond that, she
Or a
also...
drug problem.
Or a drug problem. And she also... Is it true that when you went to the
It's
school?
at the school.
Yeah, who hears that person goes, you know what you should be? A lawyer.
It's something where you talk a lot, where everybody.
Yeah, please. Well, again, guilty.
You're right.
Jenny, what do
Jenny.
you think?
I'm gonna have to take the. I think that Sarah made the point of if you're on a jury, I would say innocent. I feel guilty though. There is reasonable doubt. So if I was in the jury and I was gonna do the actual job of a juror, which I normally don't do, I just think everyone's guilty. But I do think that he's actually guilty because I think that the way that he talks, okay, I found Asia, okay.
Right.
He didn't seem it's almost like I want the attention because I've been stuck in prison this whole time, so this has given me something to do this year, but I don't really think he wants him to dig any deeper.
Right. Mark?
I feel the same way. If I were on the jury, I would find him not guilty, but in my heart, I think that he is guilty. And we can get into all the reasons why I think that's the case.
Natalie Maines standing
you are
alone.
all
Why do you think
alone
he's innocent?
out here.
This is fascinating to me.
Well, I mean, I will say, I didn't say I believe it 100%. I have gone back and forth, but Jay's story I read last night, someone had done a really good blog and a really good rundown of all of his statements, and it just changes. Can we cuss on here?
Sure.
I'm glad you asked
Now
that.
now I'm not going to because that's so lame. I had to ask permission to cuss and then to cuss. But it's really sign of a guilty person is when their story changes, and Jay's story changes all the time. Plus, I have read a lot about false confessions, and Jay's confession just really falls in line with police leading him to all of his information.
And also,
I just don't trust a word Jay said.
And I know that in all false confessions, there seems to be those first 45 minutes to an hour of not taped.
Right, and then they allow him to stop the tape at a
Yeah.
certain point.
Right.
Which is now illegal, though. They cannot do that 45 minutes to an hour before the interrogation, which is something that wasn't around back in '99, but you can't even do that anymore.
Right.
Now it has
Now
to
it
be
all
taped as
has
soon as
to
you
be-
walk in.
Yeah, which is how it should be.
Yeah. But how would he know
where the car is? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Jay knows where the car is.
Well, Jay is guilty. Why would he have to change his story so many times?
But Jay is technically guilty. He helped.
He did
helped, and he was convicted.
So
of
if
fraud.
anybody's going to be wrongfully convicted, it should be Jay.
Okay.
Can we agree
I
on
think we
that?
all
Send a
agree.
child to jail.
Let's do
We know
Jay.
what child we should finish.
And he worked at the porn store.
Oh,
the
please.
Southwest
By the,
porn
Guilty.
star.
by the way, who works at a porn star after a murder? I'm up for murder. I'm gonna work at a porn shop.
It's like a palate cleanser.
Yeah, so it's a do-over.
Yeah, it's a nice
It's the ginger of your sushi dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, here's the thing: is that the whole thing took two people, because to get Hayes' car to the park and ride takes somebody driving her car and somebody driving another car. So there's definitely
Well, what if he took the bus back?
from the park and ride.
Yeah, or what if he hitchhiked or...
I mean, would we have found one of these people who saw him on the bus? Would we have found? I mean, maybe not.
Well, nobody was looking, and then I think 15 years later, when people are looking, nobody's going to remember if they were on the bus with this guy, Jay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so for those who do think he is guilty,
What do you
which
think,
is,
Bobby? Are you staying neutral?
I'm trying to stay neutral at Sarah.
Oh yeah, real neutral.
Sarah.
This last episode, when she found out that the cell phone records could or could not, like, basically it showed him guilty at first. Like,
Yeah.
oh, the phone. She went, oh, that is hardly down the middle.
A fading groan in the background. But what would be the motive if Adnan really is guilty? I mean, that's, I think, one of the biggest things that the case revolved around was we couldn't find a real motive. And Jensen, I know we've spoke about this. You've always been saying the motive's been super obvious.
To me.
Yeah.
I've never been in a situation where a girl has had to write, and I don't think any of my friends have been in a situation where girls had to write a letter that says, please stay away from me.
Right.
And that's at a young age. I mean, there's also, when you found out this episode that her and her new boyfriend, Don, had only been together 13 days.
Yeah.
That's enough time for him to grow in anger.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that they were together a long time. When I heard that in the new episode, and then the fact that, like, he would have only been at school a couple days to find out how into this Don guy she was, he had shown, I understand that's not enough to convict someone, but he had shown some sort of aggression in these diaries that she was writing. He had shown some sort of problem with, obviously, with his parents at the dance. That would have thrown me into a tither as a child. Like, your parents show up at a dance? I don't even want my parents dropping me off. There were things, and I know it's not convictable, but these are things just for my heart, what I thought happened is hearing that, it feels like a motive. And it's the only motive for me.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that he got, he asked her for a ride, and that, everyone said, okay, ask her. We don't know the conversation that took place in this car. We don't know that he was like, so you're really going to stay with Don? And she's like, yeah, he throws the ding dong way better than you. And he snapped. Like, we don't know what took place in the conversation that actually happened. So
Well, we don't even know Adnan was in that car with her having
Which is
a
true.
conversation.
which is true.
You don't
But just going along with that story, if that could have been a motive. He's in the car with her. She says something, and he snaps.
Right.
It's possible.
Okay, so as hard as I want to fight for Adnan, I think the thing that I know we were both stuck on again was, why didn't Adnan try calling Hay after she disappeared?
Neither did Don.
And then today's episode came out, and neither did Don. And now I'm realizing,
Well, guys are assholes. Is
Yeah,
what- guys are terrible
universal.
people. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're young guys. They're like,
But-
who knows?
But if Adnan is sitting at the house that night and the police call him saying, where's Hay? Her family thinks that she's missing. We can't find her. Nobody knows where she is. Why doesn't he try and call her?
Yeah.
Why? That to me
I
points.
really want to hear you on this. This is
That
one of the
completely
most-
points to
Yeah.
somebody that knows exactly
Yes,
where she
Natalie,
is. Or
please.
in the final episode today, where he says the only people that know what really happened is me, or whoever else did it.
That was so bad.
Like,
But I mean, really, it's either Adnan or Jay. There's nobody else. Even when they brought up this other guy at the end,
Yeah.
okay, well, why would Jay say I saw her dead in the trunk of a car if there was another person? That doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Because, okay, I thought about that. What if Jay was up to no good in Adnan's car? We know he went to all these cell phone pings are all around Baltimore. I mean, he was cruising around doing something, and all those phone calls What was your question? Because I do have an answer.
She's saying between.
It seems like it only could be Adnan or Jay, because even when they brought up the other guy.
Oh, I just think maybe Adnan. Maybe Jay was covering up. He was maybe up to no good, drug stuff, something. And I think in Jay's mind, maybe he started believing Adnan did this. Who else could have done it?
Which he did say. Which, by the way, is a very weird thing to say.
When Jay goes, well, then who did it?
Then he goes, then who did?
Well, you saw the body, Jay.
Yeah, but he saw the body, and he's sitting there throwing
that.
his clothes away and wiping fingerprints off his own shovels. I mean,
and he claims he did the clothes dumping and the shovel wiping. What does he say? The next day, but Jen says it was that night, or vice versa. They have completely different stories there, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
But I think Jay's definitely involved somehow. I don't know if he was involved with this, what's his name, Ronald Lee Moore. If he saw something.
Now, who's Ronald Lee Moore?
Okay, so we learned about that today.
He was a guy that got out of prison 12 or 13 days before his
Oh,
murder.
And his DNA has been linked to another Asian girl who was murdered, and his DNA was found there, and it was during that time as well.
Right, but then how does Jay know where her car is?
Now,
why did Jay? How would he know this guy?
If Hay were killed by a serial killer, or it was just she was at the wrong place at the wrong time, ran to the wrong person, how does Jay know where her car is?
Because what if Jay played his role, but with someone else, with this Ronald Lee Moore?
But why would Ronald Lee Moore call up Jay?
Well, I don't know.
But couldn't they have made
somebody needs to find out.
But couldn't someone have made the connection between? Yeah. But somebody would have made the connection that Ronald Lee Moore and Jay knew each other somehow, and they never did that.
She just got that name though. I don't think anybody's had time.
But you would think that she would have.
I'm hoping there's going to be a connection.
That would be, there were times when I'm listening where I go, yeah, all we need is a serial killer here. And there really were times where I was like, I just need something outside of this circle, because these stories are messes. No one, for good reason, they're children. And now they're 15 years later. These aren't supposed to make sense. And so when you hear them, you're just like, man, I want something to not be Adnan. I want something to even not be Jay. I want it to be something that's like an act of God in a way. And I think that when you heard the serial killer thing, it's like, okay, well, they'll run the DNA, and if it comes up, well, then a dead guy did this?
Right.
You can also take the point of view that what if Jay or Adnan had nothing to do with this, and in false confessions, Jay just knows, oh shit. Like if Jay, in Jay's mind, he's thinking Adnan did this, he's thinking I was driving around in Adnan's car with his phone. So if the cops in that 40 minutes before they hit record is telling you, Jen's told us this, it doesn't match this, like they start getting really scared and like, shit, I'm about to get busted for this murder. Yeah. And Adnan probably is the one that did it because he's her ex and he was probably jealous. Like you start making all this up in your mind, and before you know it, you're saying these calls were this and this and this, and they're not lining up time-wise, so the detective leads you to making stuff line up when stuff isn't lining up.
Which I think in any of our opinions, I think that plays into it. I think even if you think that Adnan is guilty, these stories stray so much that there has to be an outside influence. Has to be. Just matters how important it is to the case.
The other thing, did anyone catch, I found this very suspicious of Jay, when he says he picked Adnan up from the Best Buy. He says he has this visual of him being at the payphone outside of Best Buy with red gloves. I think that's very weird that he points out red gloves.
Right.
Why didn't you say what color his coat was, what color his hat was, what kind of shoes he had on? You're saying red gloves.
Then again,
because you're afraid there's going to be a thread of red somewhere.
Right. But then again, if Mark is standing outside the building wearing red gloves, I'm going to remember that Mark was wearing red gloves.
Exactly.
That's because
but when you hear Adnan makes a reference, like the first time he talks to the cop, he mentioned something about red gloves. We got to... Like he's supposed to know what these are, and he goes, and he's thinking back, and still, I don't, some red gloves.
Yeah.
I think these are key. And what guy does wear red gloves? Why hasn't anyone asked Adnan, did you own red gloves? Do we have a photo of Adnan with red gloves? Does Jen own red gloves? Does Jay own red gloves? I want to know who had red gloves.
Well, fair. There are two people of interest, I think, that stick out for everybody. The first would be Stephanie. I know I'm hung up on Stephanie because, first of all, I think it's strange that both Jay and Adnan had this really profound relationship with her. Either they were her best friend or slash boyfriend. It was also her birthday that day, and from what I recall, I don't think either of them tried calling her on the phone, which is also really strange to me. And she even admitted in the case file that she even had an interest in Adnan. So what do you guys think about Stephanie? Why did we never hear from her?
I think she knows something, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's she protecting?
I
If
don't
she
know, 'cause-
loved Adnan.
Because I wonder if like Jay figured out that she liked Adnan, and then maybe he was like, well, good, I'll go kill Hay. You know, just out of, like, why are you buying my girlfriend a birthday
But why is
present?
Stephanie not saying that to
Maybe
say
she's
it's
in on it.
Jay and not Adnan?
Maybe she's just dumb.
And it's important to say. Before Bobby,
Yeah.
before Bobby and Ben created this hundreds empire, you were a lawyer. You
I was, yeah.
were a lawyer. So you looked through stuff.
I went through the actual file here.
Yeah.
But Sarah had never brought up. Like,
Sarah has never brought up that this part where one of Stephanie's friends calls Debbie. Her name is Debbie. Well, so we have everyone's full names in here, which I'm not going to disclose. But Debbie says that
Can
Stephanie.
I get a copy?
Sure. Yeah, I'm done with it. You can take it after. I'm done with this whole thing.
this is his closure.
But Stephanie confides to Debbie that she was interested in Appellant, and they were both prom king and prom queen. That's Adnan and Stephanie. So there was something also really strange going on there. I mean, it's high school relationships. I forgot a lot of how romance went down, you know, when you're 16, 17, 18 years old. But, you know, I just think that's strange. I think it's strange that neither of them tried calling her on her birthday, and they were so interested in getting her a gift. But they, right? Didn't they spend
That's
the day
very weird. Adnan
Yeah.
thought that it was important for his not really close friend
Right.
to go get a gift for his girlfriend. It's just a
I thought
weird
it was
story.
weird
Take
that
my car, take my phone.
But I thought it was weird
Yeah.
that no one ever said, like, why wouldn't Adnan just go, yeah, I told him to go get her a gift because I got one for her and it's going to make him look like an asshole.
But
I
if
got a
anyone
gift
ever
and-
asked, did you buy a gift? What'd you buy her? Did
Yeah.
you have plans with your girlfriend, Jay? It's her birthday. You're hanging out with Adnan at some girl's house with Adnan stoned
looking for weed,
and-
right?
By the way, she's
On the couch.
she's the person I trust most on the Serial podcast. That girl
Kathy.
whose house they go to. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's Kathy, right?
She's
Yeah.
the most honest.
You heard her story and I was like, oh, everything she's saying is true. Also because if someone came to your house, no matter 15 years later, if two people came to your house on a day that a girl's missing from high school and they're acting weird, you're going to remember most of it.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's just in your mind. You're going to be like, yeah, they were strange, went in the other room and talked on the phone.
This is
and-
the
Or wearing
thing,
red gloves. Or just,
well, that's all my friends.
yeah, they're just wearing red
This is
gloves.
the thing
yeah.
that I don't think it's very strange at all. I mean, Kathy, she paints the picture like it's really odd what they're doing, but I mean, we were all stoners in high school and we all laid around other people's bedrooms. I don't know. I used to do that, right? So we were just, you know, none of that is strange behavior to me. Like, I don't see why
Yeah,
she
I
thought
agree.
it was.
I don't think
I don't
it's
see why
that
she was so
weird.
hung up on it. I mean, you would just wander around, stop at people's houses you didn't know.
And if
lay
you're
on the carpet,
stoned and
watch TV.
paranoid and though the cops are calling you, that's going to make you nervous no matter what.
Yeah.
Even
I mean,
if you
but-
didn't do anything, you're going to
Totally.
be like,
You don't want to talk to the cops.
I agree with
Yeah.
I
No
agree with
one
I don't ever want to talk to cops, please.
especially if you're stoned.
I'm
You're
the
like,
Rick Ross of this.
shit,
of
right?
this
Yeah.
show. Okay. I'm saying the thing too is like if the thing in episodes 1 and 2 when she kept saying it's just a regular day. How could you remember a regular day? It's not a regular day. No. They called you and told you that your ex-girlfriend and friend, because you asked her for a ride earlier, is missing, and the cops are looking for her. I would remember everything like that,
right.
and maybe not earlier. Maybe oh man, I didn't think about stuff before, but it's not a regular day. It's technically probably the biggest day of your life in a way. Like this girl you're very close with is missing. You would remember most of it. So it's
But what about Don? Don claims he still loves her to this day. Don didn't go looking for her or calling her.
His mom.
Don,
Yeah.
A couple of things we learned about Don.
Yeah.
One, he works
Don-
at Lenscrafters with
with
his
his
mother,
mom,
which
yes.
is suspect in many ways. And then the other thing being, they were only together 13 days.
Yeah.
Like everything in my fridge is older than 13 days old.
Yeah.
Like I'm like I don't understand how they were like so close so
But
fast.
also, this is high school,
Right.
13 days.
Right.
Like 2 weeks in high school. Remember that
Yeah.
microcosm of high school where, like, this all totally makes sense to me when you think about it in terms of high school. Them being together 2 weeks in high school is the equivalent of like 2 years as an adult. You
It's
know,
like
you
dog years.
Yeah, you fall in love in high school and it's immediate, and you get jealous in high school and that's all you can think about, or you have a problem with a friend and it's the biggest thing in your whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's why all the John Hughes movies are so gigantic because it resonates.
And there's
you
so many
know?
murderers in them. My question, I guess, is going to be, and I think this has come up a lot lately, which is Sarah's argument rests so much in how can this boy have done this? He showed no signs before.
Because of his dairy cow eyes.
His dairy cow eyes.
Yes.
Showed no signs after. He is a model citizen in every way. He really, he was and has been. He's been a great inmate, so much so that he likes jail. He's a cook there and he does all these things. Is there a chance that you can snap? Is there a moment that a totally normal person can murder someone? And it seems like a lot of society that listens to the show and has put their opinions out there on social media believe it's not possible. Right. That a dude can't just break like that.
Well, didn't they talk to some psychiatrist in, not this week's, but the prior one?
Yes.
Where they talked to the psychiatrist
They said he
and
can.
said people can do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I always feel like when they interview a murderer's neighbor on the news, the neighbor says they never would have suspected him.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure this is
Yeah,
someone's
everybody
stand-up
says
bit,
that.
or I'll steal it. But I'm sure that they say, you know, like, there's never been a neighbor. It's like, that dude? Yeah, murderer.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there's only one body. Like,
Yeah.
you don't hear that.
I've just been waiting every day. Like, the cops are going to show up. He's going to kill
Knew
someone.
he's going to happen. So
know.
I don't know. I mean, is that something that...
Did you learn in your research?
Yeah.
Was there communication between Jay and Adnan after she disappeared?
Yes, there was.
They talked about it today, actually.
Yeah, they did
Oh,
talk
wow.
about that today.
I listened twice
what did
today.
they
How do I not
Well, they were
know
talking
that?
about like, the guy that he worked with at the video store.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he was saying, you know, how afraid he was and how,
Yeah.
you know, he kept,
Right.
and then him,
He's with all the threats.
Yeah.
And the van outside.
But I do think it was weird with.
But do we have phone
Back to the Future
logs?
Lebanese terrorists.
Do we have phone records of Adnan and Jay talking? Because remember how if Jay was so concerned about getting rid of his clothes and all of that, wouldn't he be wanting to confirm with Adnan that he did the same? Like if Jay's so
Yeah.
interested in being spot on and trying to cover his tracks, isn't he talking to Adnan and going, "Listen, are you doing this
Yeah.
too? What'd you do with your clothes?" Like,
Yeah.
And was there ever a cadaver dog involved with the trunk of the cars?
I don't know.
Just even you saying cadaver dog shows that you deserve to be on this way more than any of us.
That's right.
What the fuck is a cadaver dog?
Cadaver dog or a dog cadaver?
Cadaver dog. It sniffs
Wow.
out dead bodies, and we got to know if there was a dead
Well,
body
I
in
guess
this
they were
trunk.
because they used Hayes curling iron to find the scent when they were looking for
Yeah, but they
hers.
didn't mention anything about the car.
mention
I've
the
never
car.
heard any proof
But if they were
of
using
if there
dogs,
was a body in the trunk.
Right.
Yeah. But I did think it was weird what the guy that he worked with said. You know, he told me that he helped bury her,
Yeah.
which was weird because why would you tell somebody that you barely know that you work with at a porn store?
Right.
We're talking about two
By the
people.
way-
Talking about high school kids.
High school.
Yeah, but it
stoners
does
who
seem
talk.
weird.
And they
though.
say he did lie, and that's the other thing too. I want to know examples. Like she says, the video store co-worker says that he just thought he was lying. I mean, somebody's a major liar if
Right.
you're just blowing off that he helped bury a dead body.
Well, then he-
Like I want to know other examples of the stuff he lied about.
Right. So speaking of the buried dead body, the other person of interest is Mr. S.
Oh,
I love that
Okay,
guy.
and I
Treating it
I
like it's
just
a Steve
love-
Buscemi cameo.
He's my favorite
He's my
character.
favorite.
Her reading the whole thing of like,
He needs
oh,
a
a hoodie,
sitcom.
sunglasses,
He's
and then
great.
gyrating up and down. I was like, I can see it in my head. This guy's
I've been
great.
coming across this theory. I mean, I know a lot of other people share this same theory that Mr. S and, well, if Jay was a drug dealer and he had supplied Mr. S with weed and they were smoking together, and now we know after this episode that Jay was pretty loose about speaking about what had happened that night. And if he had somehow sold Mr. S weed and told Mr. S while they were smoking together, hey, guess what? I did this thing, and the body's out there. And that's maybe a reason, that's maybe how Mr. S found the body. I mean, I
Because
just
he did
think it's
he picked
strange.
a weird place to pee.
I
it's
just
very
think it's strange that he went so far out of his way.
But not as far as
Not as far-
you
Right,
think.
right.
Yeah.
But still, to go a little bit out of his way to drop his drawers and
Yeah.
take a piss when the dude is a streaker. He obviously didn't care about being naked in front
Right.
of people,
True.
right?
True.
Like that's
That's
something
true.
normal people like us do. If he's
That's
actually
like, I don't want anybody to see my
Yeah,
urine.
exactly.
For the record, record, if I do have to pee, I don't pick Leakin Park because it's too much of a pun. You know, like, Leakin and Leakin. It's too obvious. It's too hacky. I wouldn't do it. So just.
What do you guys think about Mr. S?
I think that he is a tertiary character in this whole thing. I don't think that he is a suspect. I don't think that he is involved really in any way.
It's just another weird
Just another
coincidence
weird
in a
part of
weird
this whole
story.
thing.
It's a weird part of it, and
Weird
also his
story.
sister was a math teacher that taught Hay. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a weird connection with the guy. You know,
Yeah,
that-
it had a real log lady vibe from Twin Peaks. Like a real, like, just like, oh, where'd that come from? But it's great. You're like stoked. But
I'm a streaker, and
Yeah.
my sister's a math teacher,
Yeah.
and
just the common small town story.
Yeah.
But I think everything is sketchy, and I think that's why, no matter how guilty I think he is, this should not have put a child in
No,
jail.
I'm afraid sometimes people are going to get away with murder.
Yeah.
Cops got to be smarter than the
Now, I
crooks.
had often entertained the idea that Jay and Adnan did this together, and what if there was just some weird handshake, like, look, if I go down, you know,
He would have turned.
you think so?
I mean, at
there
this
were
point-
so many weird parts of it that, I don't know.
But I don't think you can.
I'm
I don't think you
reaching.
can think that Adnan is guilty and not also. Well, I guess you could. I guess you can make the point that Adnan did the killing and then he called Jay, and that's the actual narrative of what actually happened. Because that's kind of what I think. I think that actually what Jay said is kind of what went down.
I do feel that every time that Jay has said that he was threatened and Stephanie was threatened, that story has been backed up. I don't think there's ever been a lie there. I think that everyone in again, it could be a great lie, and we could be dealing with a bunch of psychopaths, but it did seem like he felt threatened by Adnan.
But what
the
if he's
choir
just
boy.
changing the name of who's threatening him?
Right.
Like right after I had listened to maybe episode 10 or 11, I was reading some other case because I'm on this board for Proclaim Justice, which is about
What are we
getting
doing here, guys? This
wrongfully
I
convicted.
could not
I'm
feel
on
more
boards
minorly.
and all.
Did you ask about the cadaver dog?
We're the Pop Warner team playing this game. Like, this is not right. Yeah.
But there was a guy who had been who had wrongfully convicted someone, and then like right before he was about to die for another crime, he admitted this guy did not do that. And they said, well, why did you say he did it? And there was that guy had been on his mind. He just met the guy for like the first time earlier in the day. And he just said it was the first name that came to his mind. Yeah. And so, you know, Jay might have used Adnan because he was in Adnan's car and he had his phone, and he just seemed like the easiest person to, if the cops were pressing him for a name or wanted something, he just seemed like the easiest person. But I mean, Jay was definitely involved. I definitely feel like Jay was involved.
But he was also convicted. I mean, you
Yeah,
know,
no.
Jay was also
Yeah,
convicted.
right,
He was
right.
convicted of he just didn't do time because he turned states.
But don't you think, okay,
I
if
think his
you're
punishment was
Adnan,
answering that lawyer's questions
Oh,
for that amount of
God.
time.
if you're Adnan and you did this, if you're Adnan and you know, okay, I killed Hay, Jay, and you know Jay did all the things that he's saying he did.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you, and Jay's telling, so Jay's totally uncool and Jay's shouldn't be telling, you know you did this, you are going to turn on Jay. I just think Adnan would have turned on Jay.
I agree.
He's never turned on
He's
Jay.
never turned
Jay's
on
the
Jay.
easiest person to turn on. That's your biggest chance of getting out of this.
Yeah, and he never did.
never
And
did.
if you know you did this, well, fuck, my only way to get
Yeah.
out of doing this is to say Jay
Well,
did
plus
it. And it's going to
also-
be his word against mine,
Yeah.
and we're both either going down or
The
we're
African
not.
American drug dealer. I'm not even being a dick. That's true. It'd be the easiest person to pin it on. When I hear this stuff about police, setting up Adnan, if you're going to set up anyone, it's the guy with a record. Like Jay had a very small, not important record, but that's who you would trigger. I mean, that would be the guy. And so I always felt it weird to say like they told Jay where the car was, and that's what.
You know who I think did it? Don's mom.
Because look, I mean, she wants a better job. She wants a
Don's
better
mom
life.
at Lynn's Craft. She's probably got the serial killer frames and everything.
It's a sad existence.
We all have wild theories. Like my wife thinks that it was Adnan's dad, and she's like bent on it.
Why?
Well, that's actually a good theory.
because he
though.
shows up at the dance.
Right.
Yeah, but that's
Yes.
interesting. Like he's not supposed to be dating, and
Yeah,
the dad
and
could have.
Adnan has said that he was more afraid of telling his dad that he was dating Hay than actually telling him what had happened. And like this guy sounds pretty
interesting.
scary and intense.
And he doesn't come downstairs when they go and talk to the family. They remember like the dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he also could be like, you know what, and he could
But
be in jail
Adnan's
for
mom says
punishment.
she's the one that was the most hung up on him dating girls and stuff.
Right.
She says my other children and my husband all thought I was being too harsh.
Right.
So I don't think the dad was just trying to do what the mom was telling him to do. The dad
another-
probably wouldn't go to the dance unless the mom was making him
Or
go.
another relative. There's all this talk about these Pakistani relatives, his family, this scary family in the van, and like maybe it was someone in the mosque, or it's sketchy territory. But
Well, it is. I mean, it's something that's come up a lot in a lot of the think pieces about the show, which is that Sarah looks at it from a very white bread, that in the way that she looks at, she said the word immigrant when no one technically is an immigrant. Like she said certain terms where it was like, oh, you are very, but it's also NPR.
Yeah.
Like that's what all their stories sound like. There's not a whole lot of minority voice at NPR. And when they do, it's very good. But this was also her journey. This wasn't Woodward and Bernstein. This was her journey looking into this case that brought to her. But yeah, I mean, where that race plays into it, it was always such a touchy subject on the podcast.
Well, and Adnan's mom wants to believe that it was racism against Muslims, but I don't know. This was pre 9/11, so
What about
was there a
Hayes
lot of
family?
racism
Was there-
towards Muslims?
Hayes
there
family, they were
was,
against
even
it.
back then. I mean, I remember. Yeah.
I grew up in Lubbock, Texas. We didn't have, I don't think there's a mosque in town.
I've been to Lubbock.
My suburb of Houston, no mosque.
It's one of those things where I think that it's just sort of, it was sketchy all around. There's so much things that you could crack away at, and it's like even if we did this for 6 hours, there would be. By the way, it's 6 hours long, Natalie. There are things that we're.
I'm in.
Okay, we're cracking away at that. I think every time you'd be like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. I mean, but I still know that if I was in that high school and I knew that I saw his parents at the dance, and I knew that there was like an issue, and I knew that, and I was a friend who maybe heard that she had written him a letter that said, "Stay away from me." Like I'd be like, well, you should check with that guy.
Right.
Like that would just be and that doesn't always make him guilty, but it does make me feel like I have the motive.
Right.
And I know that Sarah's super hung up on how does this nice child have a motive? I think it's there.
But there's something with Adnan that led me, I guess, towards the end when I'm like, I guess maybe he did do it because he's so calm in prison. It's like eerily calm that you're
He's
Well,
kinda
you're
cool
not
about
gonna
being
be.
there.
Yeah, but it's like
Listen,
almost
it's
too
been
much.
15 years. You got to get to that. When you listen about or read Damien Eccles' book about being on death row and stuff, I mean, that's survival. You have to get into that frame of mind. You can't be all up in arms and twisted inside about the injustice for 15 years. You've got to come to terms
But
with
then
your
after
fate
15
and where
years,
you're
this
at.
woman comes into your life and is your advocate and is
lover.
researching your history and is poking into the case and trying to basically fight to get you out or fight for whatever.
He doesn't see her as that, I don't think.
I
He
think-
sees her
yeah.
as a nosy reporter and using him to make a name for herself, I think is how he views it from behind bars.
Jensen had a good point.
I mean, he didn't even know his cousin had written that letter.
Right.
He wasn't necessarily on board with all of it. They had to
Right.
kind of convince him.
Do you think that Sarah's got a boner for him?
Yeah,
I
let's
do.
definitely
I
talk
totally
about
think that. I totally think she likes him.
What is with that unhealthy? It's an unhealthy.
They're going to be getting one of
obsession.
those Charles Manson weddings. It's coming. It's coming. It's
I
on its
think
way.
we're gonna see. I mean, it depends on how this whole thing plays out. But aren't we gonna see that kind of thing about this now? Isn't he gonna have a champion group now? Like, isn't there gonna be a bunch of people who stay with this case? I mean, I'd hate to see it go away.
hope.
I mean, it would be nice to see it keep
I
going.
think it'll hang around just because
will.
there's no clear answer, and I
Right.
think people were so into it that it's like
I
leaving.
mean, I hope the DNA will give us an
Prove
answer.
something.
Yeah.
And where is the DNA from?
Well, that's from her. They're checking hair, nail.
What was under her nails, and then
And they didn't check this before.
no, for 15 years. I mean, that's the thing too. There's so much corruption.
Was there, maybe I'm just forgetting, was there any marks on Adnan? Like scratches or like
don't
any?
know.
They never really.
No,
There's
was
no physical.
nothing,
There's technically
in
no
the file.
physical.
Yeah,
no
Yeah.
physical
no
evidence.
physical evidence.
Yeah.
There was no threads from, if I recall it correctly, if there was no threads from anything he was wearing on her. The mud on his boots didn't match any of the mud where her body was buried. Hairs were different hairs. Like there was nothing.
There's no
connected
physical evidence.
But I mean,
physically
his fingerprints
to
were in her
him.
car, but of course,
Yeah,
that was his
right,
girlfriend.
That's
Right.
But it is interesting that the one page torn out of the map book was the page that showed Leakin Park.
Remember that
Yeah,
part?
yeah.
Oh, was
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
There was a palm print on the back cover of the map book, and then a page torn out had Leakin Park. But also those big map books, if I'm correct, Leakin Park is probably on several pages in a row. Like they don't just take, like usually they sort of overlap the pages. So I wanted
And that
to
palm
ask
print
that
matches
as well.
no one.
Matches Adnan.
It matches Adnan,
On
right.
the outside
On
of the map book.
Right.
So for me, Sarah Kane, and I mean, going back to Sarah, that was actually the reason why I fell in love with Serial. It wasn't actually the case itself. The case is remarkable. It's a really interesting story. But I actually started getting more fascinated with watching Sarah fall in love with this guy on the podcast. I mean, it was just so like, it's hypnotizing.
I mean, beyond the sort of meme that they're going to be together as a couple, I do think she never pretended to be, and I said that before, she's never really pretended to be unbiased.
Yeah.
But it did feel like at times, like the second to last episode was quite obviously, in my opinion, a love letter. It was also filler, but it wasn't a great episode. But I do think that she, and in this last episode, she really redeemed herself in that way. I think that she sort of opened it back up to saying, listen, he could be lying, there could be things. But I think that, again, I just couldn't understand how she doesn't get how the jury convicted him, but then she also thinks she can sit on the laurels of he was such a good-looking, innocent kid.
Right.
That doesn't.
Well,
work for me.
I also don't see how the jury could convict him.
I don't either.
I mean, there's no
reasonable doubt.
no evidence there. There's no way you can take away reasonable doubt from that.
No.
There's no smoking gun. There's no evidence.
And
There's
why
one
they
person's
got
story.
a conviction is because here's this guy, Jay, involving himself in all of it. And remember when she does talk to that juror, the juror says, well, why would that guy... I mean, that guy's in jail too. Why would he?
No.
And she was like, no, he's not in jail.
Yeah. She's
like,
oh,
what?
really?
What?
Like,
Oh.
yeah, that did change things around for her. Like, oh, well, why wouldn't he be in jail? It's all weird.
Yeah.
I kind of felt a lot like Sarah though throughout the whole thing. Like initially, I started off, and you and I would text each other and argue back and forth. Like through the beginning, I was pulling for Adnan the whole time. Like this guy was done, and I still feel like he was done a grave injustice. But in the beginning, I thought it was a grave injustice because he was just unlucky and wrongfully convicted. And now I feel like, you know, if gun to my head that I had to choose someone who was the guilty party, it'd be him. But throughout the course of the whole serial, just everything, all the evidence just seems to point towards him.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what Sarah came at the end also. It kind of felt like at the end she's like, fuck, I went through this whole journey, did all this stuff, all this research, but at the end,
But
you
what
know,
evidence points towards him?
him not trying to call Hay is really damning in my mind.
That is a very personal touch evidence. It doesn't
Yeah.
work, because I feel that way too. I don't understand how you find that out and not call or text. It's
But
weird to
Don
me.
didn't.
Don knew her 13
But Don
days.
only knew her 13 days.
No, he only officially
Well, yeah,
dated her
right, he knew her a little
13
longer,
days.
right.
Maybe
They
Don's
work
mom
together.
wouldn't let him use the phone.
One phone is a lens grabber, and then they have to...
But seriously,
Don.
if I'm at somebody's house and the police call me up and say, this girl's missing, her parents are worried, her sisters were like, whatever, nobody knows where she is, I go, I have no idea where she is. And then I hang up and I try and call. That's just what you
Well,
do.
the defense, so you know, I don't believe in this, but the defense against that is that he was around people all day who were talking about it. So he felt that other people were trying to connect
And the
with him.
days after, and
But
you do
Don-
all
he did,
group
and
together
Don
and
was-
huddle
did call.
together.
So that's something that happened really fast on the podcast. And I wish you would have focused on it more. Is that she said that he did call the police.
Yeah,
Like
he
a
did
day
call
or two
the police.
later,
Yeah, yeah.
Who
it was
did?
Adnan.
Adnan
Did call the police, and I remember it was so quick when she brought it up. But I think he said, "I think you have the wrong. This is not the right story."
Yeah.
Like
And
he still thought she went to California.
He said the most racist thing that I heard on the entire
What
podcast,
was it?
which was he said you got the wrong girl because all Asian girls look alike. Check again. Do you
That
remember
is
when he
right.
said
He did
that?
say that,
And
right,
that's when
right.
I was like, Adnan did it. He's a racist.
But I thought he had said people say all Asian girls look alike.
He said
Wasn't
something
he
to-
saying
We all
like
have
they're
Asian
doing
friends.
that?
Some of my best friends are Asian.
I serve on the board of an Asian.
That's right.
That's what I do.
No, but he might have been. I took that he was pointing out they think it's hay because everyone thinks all Asians
Right,
look
right,
alike.
right.
But the one thing is, you know, the one person who's
But can we
openly
debate that?
saying-
Do all Asians look alike?
Clearly.
But the one person who actually says, I buried her is Jay. Like that is the one crystal clear. He's saying she was in the trunk. I helped bury her. Adnan saying he didn't do it.
And not to pile on, as you're the only
That's-
person, but his story has changed, but details changed. Not the core of Jay's story ever changed. Details are all over the place.
Yeah.
But the idea of the car, where it was, where everything that was very strong, time is a little messed, but the core of the crime has stayed pretty consistent in Jay's story.
But here's another thing, and
But that's because Jay did do it.
That's
Everything.
the argument back. So.
and this goes against a lot of my points. Is that you can't on one hand say that that Jay was so afraid of Adnan because Adnan was bullying him and threatening him and saying that I have a hitman coming after you. And then when Adnan gets to prison, he's like, I don't know, Jay. Like he's so milquetoast about Jay when he gets into prison, you know. But whereas before he went to jail, he was supposedly, I have a hitman coming to get you, you know.
And I'm
He's a
sorry,
scary
that
guy.
is such. I don't see
That's
Adnan being
that's high
that
school
person
bravado right there.
at
That's somebody in
all.
high school going, you know, I know a guy that can come get. Like in high school, you.
And have you seen pictures of Adnan? He's not
That's
scary.
not the Adnan we know. This is not the Adnan we know.
No, but they act like he was like this strong athlete, and it's not. He looks.
But when she saw him in
Super
prison,
wimpy
she
to
said,
me.
he's tall.
Tall
He's
and
got
buffer.
dairy. He's buffed. He's got a
Dairy
beard.
cow
She's
eyes.
She was
Ah,
now
I mean, I also like. I'm very impressed with
Sarah's
Adnan.
poor husband.
Yeah, well, they're divorced now, so we did it here. But I think like and I know this is such a corny thing to say, but hearing him has made a lot of people not believe he's guilty either. He's
Oh,
a very
yeah, that was-
He's
compassionate
articulate,
guy. He's
yeah.
articulate.
Articulate.
He gets his point across. He plays both sides. He says, I can see how you believe this. I could do that. I mean, he's very thoughtful and understanding, and it's very hard for people to paint him a murderer. Yeah.
But you had the point today. You're like, at the end, in the last podcast, today's podcast, he says, how are you going to end this thing? Can you end it like kind of neutral? Is that cool?
Yeah.
Which to me was the most guilty thing he's ever done.
really?
Because I
and when he
think,
said the whole thing about like, well, you know, it's just me that knows, or whoever, maybe.
or the other person,
The other person.
the person who did it.
Yeah.
But I think that when you say to someone that you've caught, not
You
feeling
guys
for-
are misreading all of that.
I mean, she is the pro. But I think my thing when I heard that was he doesn't need Sarah to ruin her life. I think that if he felt that Sarah was going to say this person's innocent and he needs to be, I think he was just sort of like, just put it down the middle.
I think he knows that would make Sarah come off as bullshit, and I do think he's trying to save, Sarah from the ridicule or whatever.
Taking up for his
I
mom.
think he thinks what will make him look most innocent is to say that.
Maybe.
To stay neutral. How's he supposed to tell her, say I didn't do it?
But I mean, I do want everyone to know that when I do get brought up on murder charges, I'm going to scream every moment I can.
Yeah.
I am going to scream that I'm innocent. By the way, play this back all the time when I get brought up on murder charges.
Yeah.
I will scream and yell and tell you every moment. And I know that you've been in this situation with someone and who didn't do it, and I know from interviews he wasn't doing that. But I don't know that. I feel like I would scream it every second. Don't let
But
this
wouldn't you
podcast
be,
end.
wouldn't
Keep
you
going,
be
Sarah.
screaming if you knew, okay, I did this and I'm going to be in jail for the rest of my life, probably. Wouldn't you want Jay to be there with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you live with that injustice of knowing Jay's out living his life? I mean, I think Adnan says all the right things. He doesn't answer what he doesn't know. And with Damien Eccles, again, I'll go back to that. You know, we all like
Does
toss
anybody else
around.
here know what she's talking about now? This book.
What?
Damien Eccles is part of the West Memphis 3.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Paradise
I'm
Lost.
just stupid. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
No.
No, it's the greatest. You
Yeah.
should definitely watch. I mean, it's
You've never
it's-
seen Paradise Lost or
HBO
Paradise Lost
documentary.
2 or Paradise Lost 3 or
You
West
should
of
definitely
Memphis?
watch it. One. Two, we should do this again after you watch it, purely to see if it's
We
changed
gotta
his
solve
mind.
that
Yeah,
crime.
yeah.
God, I'm stupid.
But Damien Eccles was a guy who was on death row for 18 years. But he also will not theorize about what happened because he knows what that's like to be on the other end of that. But that drives me crazy. Like, I want to hear Adnan's theories.
Yeah.
Who do you
But
think
Why
did it?
would Jay? Yeah,
But
why?
I do think he had a theory, and I think that theory got blown up in episode 3
It
when they
did.
drove. When they drove,
What?
I don't know if it's 3, but it's an episode where they
can't do the
drove from.
drive.
They
Oh,
can't
yeah.
do the drive.
do
You
the
understand that for
drive.
10
Yeah.
years he's
But
been
I
saying
mean a
the drive's
motive.
impossible.
I mean, why
I don't
would
know.
Jay do this?
He
He
says-
doesn't
he says,
know.
I don't know a lot.
It
Yeah.
sounds like he's gone through so much self-introspection and religious therapy, and he's just come to the terms with the fact that, you know, this is my problem and it's my blame, and, you know, I just can't, it must be maddening to be in jail and, like, constantly be angry at someone and there's nothing to be done of it. So he's probably just accepted it on his own terms. I don't know. Like, that's
Yeah,
the
could
best
be.
I can think of.
And some people are just adaptable. I've always said since I was a little kid, like if I ended up in jail for something, I could get by. Like,
Yeah,
I'd
I'm
learn to like jail. I'd be the funny girl in jail. I'd dance and sing. I'd have all the friends.
Now
I'd make it work.
I want you to get cast on Orange is the New Black. That's so
I would love that.
there you go. You heard it here.
They need a sing and dance man.
I was so annoyed that the first, like right when I started listening to it, the kids in high school, when she asks just kids that haven't done anything wrong,
Yeah.
like, what did you do last Friday? Am I the only one that thinks that is bizarre that kids have that shitty of a memory?
I don't know what I did last
I have
Friday.
a shitty memory.
Oh, see,
I
I
do
don't.
too.
I'm like
You do?
Rain Man.
And
I
at
remember
school,
everything.
so much is the same. It's all the same. But that's the thing too. We've never known. Was this every day? Have we learned if Jay borrowed Adnan's car before? Because that's the other thing I don't like is
well,
that
they weren't that
Adnan
close.
acts like he didn't know that much about Jay. But you're leaving him your car and your phone. Okay, yes, I could have been that dumb in high school.
He keeps saying
if
it was
if I wasn't
ordinary
so afraid
day,
of my
but
dad.
The cops called him on that
Also,
day.
why are you
I will
buying a phone the day
remember.
before?
But maybe he means ordinary
That's right, he
day
just
up
bought the
until
phone the day before.
that
He bought the
time.
phone the day before, then gave it to someone? That's so weird.
And also
Yeah.
them saying like him and Jay weren't that close, and you're going, but you loaned your car and
brand new phone.
Yeah, I didn't have
smoke
weed buddies per se, like
But-
dudes
Yeah.
that were just for like oh in high school it was just that guy because he had weed. Like, but did you loan that guy your car? It seems
Everyone
like
in
the
that
last
high
guy
school,
you
by the
had.
way, was a pothead. It
Yeah.
sounds like everyone's
Yeah.
like smoking. I mean, like
Yeah,
not
that
one
school's-
person
yeah.
said, "Oh, I didn't do that."
Also,
in high
here
school,
just-
like everybody.
This is totally an aside, but why did he give Jay his phone in the first place? If Jay didn't need a phone, he had a pager.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Jay had his own pager.
Yeah.
Because they were saying like you can't trace Jay's calls because he didn't have a cell phone, but he had a pager. So why would you give Jay a phone?
It was weird.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is weird. And going back to something we touched on earlier about the whole thing is weird, and it started making me wonder whether everything is just weird. Like life is just weird. And any case, if you look at it 15 years later and you extrapolate that much evidence and there's that much conjecture, becomes the most famous podcast in the world, and everyone has an opinion. I think things just get weirder and weirder. And like to me, the most weirdest part of all was Neighbor Boy. Like Neighbor Boy makes no sense. If you guys remember that episode,
I don't remember.
Yeah, about seeing the dead body.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
right.
the girl who was
Well, a
talking to
neighbor
her
girl. One of them
Yeah.
was absolutely out of their mind.
Yeah, and the guy was like, no, I saw a dead body in the car in Best Buy, but it was after Adnan was already in jail or something like that.
No,
It
the
was-
guy says, I never saw a dead
Yeah,
body.
and then Sarah goes to her later and says, what is this? And then the girl sticks her story. It's just, that's like,
It's a town full of potheads.
That's where I want to get. That's where I
If
want
everyone-
Sarah.
No one was smoking weed. I bet somebody would have a clearer memory and go, "No, I saw it. That's exactly what
One guy
happened."
comes out, he's like, I'm allergic to weed. I know everything that happened.
I can't do it.
It's actually it's a very
Yeah.
easy case.
Yeah. He did this. Dropped off.
But
there,
don't you
went
want to
here,
say? I wanted Sarah to get those two people. Like I want to hear these two people hash it out. You both have completely different stories. Let's come to a conclusion here. You two fight it out. How does she remember? You would remember someone telling you that, but you would also remember telling someone that. So it's very odd.
If Jay were the killer, would he let them into his house to ask him questions about it? He
Yeah,
did.
because they'll get a
Barely.
warrant.
Barely.
No.
The podcast.
The podcast,
yeah,
Sarah
yeah.
and her producer drove to his house
Yeah,
and
yeah.
unannounced, knocked on his door.
And he got
said,
pissed at him though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't happy about it.
I wouldn't be happy about it. I wouldn't. I don't
He's like
like.
in underwear, by the way.
Yeah.
Wiz Khalifa.
She basically painted Wiz Khalifa. She's like, he's tall, he likes weed, he has colored hair, he's very good looking,
Yeah.
he's got tattoos, he's skinny. I was like, well, it's Wiz
Listens
Khalifa.
Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
"This guy's
By the way,
awesome."
guy was awesome. Jay
Yeah.
was really dope.
Do
Yeah.
you
But
think
if
that
Jay-
Adnan got jealous though? That she was probably like, "Hey, I went to Jay's house." Hung out.
Possible.
But they cold call Jay at night, and he talks to them.
Yeah.
He's not happy about it. Of course, I don't like people coming to my house unannounced at all in the first place, let alone coming
You
to
don't
talk
even
about.
like invited guests, really.
No, I don't like
Yeah.
people at all. But then he invites them into his house and answers questions about it, and then he gets exasperated and says, "Well, then who did it? If it wasn't Adnan, then who did it?" That's
But what if it's because he really doesn't know who did it? That's what I keep
I
thinking.
was
It
kind
felt
of
it.
on your
It felt
side
it
with
there.
that, yeah.
It felt it there. But
Yeah.
then how does he know the car? It's the,
how does he know the
it's
car?
going
Yeah,
back.
that's the thing. How does he
And
know
you
where the
can
car
say
is?
the cops told him. You can say it's hard to convince.
But why did he change the location too?
Change a lot of locations.
Yeah.
But
My
that's
suspicion-
where the murder happened. Why did Jay have to change that?
Because I think that he was doing other stuff during the day with Adnan's car that he thought that he could get in trouble with.
I just wonder if 15 years later you're not just like, hey man, I sold a bunch of weed earlier in the day and that's why I was so nervous. Like it seems like not a crime anymore. Like they're not going to charge him on it. It just seems like he could have come clean on those things and he didn't, and that doesn't make it right or wrong, but those holes seem minimal to me. Like what did they do worse than murder a girl? Like nothing. Like that hole seems...
What do you think about Asia saying that she saw him in the library?
Well, that's going to be the big thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, it was the big thing if you believe Hay was killed at 2:30 or 2:40. But if we believe, which I do, that she was killed later, then it makes Asia seeing Adnan in the library not even that important.
She's
still alive.
Basically
then.
the only one in that town that probably didn't smoke pot.
Asia?
Yeah, because she actually remembered things. I have to give her
She's
that.
like, and then my boyfriend came.
Yeah.
And that was a real cock block.
But I find it odd too that a lot of these people didn't follow the case. This is somebody from your high school that got murdered.
Yeah, I had a murder in my high school.
How do you not know what happened?
I would be all over that.
Off the Dog, the movie's about my high school, and we had a murder, and I remember all that shit. I was watching the movie like, I was there, I think.
You built all your alibis.
Yeah, definitely doing something. But I think like you would know some of those things, but again, it just seems like it wasn't important to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, it also was Baltimore, where it sounds like half of the population had either killed somebody or been killed.
The jury, when they were interviewing the jurors, and it was like everyone had a murder case or something. It was just like, this is tragic.
Yeah. I was born in Baltimore, so.
Have you ever done jury duty?
No. I've gotten tossed off.
Right. How long were you there for the interview process?
2 questions. I had my butt licked. That was after the court. But no, I got thrown out because I had a relative in the sheriff's department, so they did not want me there.
Because I did it recently, and it was a little surprising how many people have had a crime committed against them or a family member.
Yeah.
Did anyone at any point during the trial just go, Natalie Maines?
No, I wanted to get chosen. I didn't get chosen either, but I sat there for 4 or 5 days. I made it a long time. I thought I was going to get by. I was the last original of the first 20 to be questioned. I was the last original one standing. But
and I hope this maybe
the defense lawyer figured out who I was.
And maybe it is important that we do see this as, between that and what's going on in the rest of the world, is that maybe jury duty is something we shouldn't be running away from.
Right.
It's like, and I guess that's, this case, and then obviously all the racial stuff going on, it does make me go, I should probably stop hiding from that.
Yeah, we need smart, with it people able to do jury duty.
And so, yes, why do you guys think Serial became so popular? What was it?
Honestly, I think that Sarah did such a great job. She was so likable, and she wasn't annoying. She wasn't nails on a chalkboard. She was really like, you felt like you knew her.
There was a shrimp sale, right? There was a sale at the shrimp place.
Yeah.
That was so cute. It was
This
adorable.
American Life, I mean, she's been around, but for whatever reason, this one just.
But
She was great at reveal. They were great at when they revealed things. They left you wanting more, needing it. I also think it was very premeditated to ask for the money after the 9th episode, because in my opinion, that was the last really good episode.
It was smart.
And then you take this 2-week break over Thanksgiving. Like, I think if they had asked for money, if they had done an episode of Thanksgiving and asked for money, people would be like, fuck this episode was shitty.
Anyone else give?
I was gonna give.
I heard that.
And then I heard they found enough money. And
She's like, thank you for the money. You're like, never mind.
I still have this MailChimp or whatever. I'm like, that's what a MailChimp. I'm like,
We
what
got
a
it as
great
Mail
girl.
Gimp. Have you seen what we've done?
I feel like they just paid $20 for advertising, and now they're like, yeah.
And I think that opens the biggest question of the podcast, in my opinion, which is, we are having fun, and everyone had fun, and everyone laughed, and there's jokes, and there's memes, and there's Mr. S, and there's this, but there's a dead girl.
Right.
Yeah.
And these are real people.
And when I read about like her brother saying, I think the podcast is actually good. It's bringing attention to this, but my mom fainted when she, like what the mother went through due to this, her daughter being murdered. You can't forget that a person's actually dead, which makes the whole thing at that high school seem that much weirder. That they're like, yeah, she died. The girl that got strangled, she's fine.
She's fine. Yeah.
And there's other Asian girls, and we just call her Hay, and it's all the same, right?
But I'm a big fan, as I know Jenny is, because we've talked about it a million times, of the staircase, and another unsolved case that now people think was done by an owl. That's a real theory.
I believe
people
that.
think it is, yeah.
It's oh my god, it's such a good documentary.
We'll do a whole nother
You're welcome on this one. That's like my
We're gonna make a list for you.
So what do we think the 322 call to Nisha is?
Yeah, I mean,
A
that's
butt
a
dial.
great question.
I do believe it's a butt dial.
You think it's a butt dial? But you know, you think
Why
about
would he call Nisha?
I know, but in 1999, a cell phone isn't like the way we butt dial on an iPhone. Those things you had to push. I mean, they
Zach
were.
Morris.
Yeah, they weren't that, but you know, like it was like a brick.
It
was like a little.
It was easier to butt dial back then. From what
Do we know what kind of phone it
I
was?
think so.
They do, but I don't know. We
Because
know.
things weren't locked.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it'd be like you actually had to physically push the buttons
No,
down.
because it was in speed. It was in speed dial.
Speed dial.
So they're saying it was one button, but it's still.
Okay, but here's a major inconsistency with Jay and Jen's story. When you look at all the phone records, that does get to be the most daunting thing to listen to. But finally, I broke down and I looked at the maps and because I wanted Sarah to just wrap it all up in a bow for me and tell me everything. But one of the major important calls that they said that was from the cell phone to Jen's house happened when Jen and Jay both say they were sitting in Jen's house.
Right.
It's sketchy.
Right.
Yeah, it's
What's
sketchy.
going on there?
And the pinging is all wrong too.
The pinging,
for Jay's side of everything before and after that.
Yeah.
How accurate was pinging in 1999?
How accurate is pinging in 2014?
I don't think it's accurate.
I
don't
still
think it
don't
was
know
that
if it's
great
direct.
either.
I know people have been.
Well, she said it's not junk science for someone to trace the steps like they did and make the calls and see if they hit the right. She said that part is not junk science.
Right.
And that part was done and did match up, most of it.
I will say that I think the dumbest person that they talked to is Jen.
I mean,
Jen Pusateri.
The friend of what's
Yeah.
the last name?
Pusateri.
Oh yeah, that's right.
she's the friend.
She had that kind of mannish voice, and she was just.
Right.
And they're like, "Well, don't you think it's weird that he cleaned the fingerprints and threw his clothes away?" Well, now that you say it, yeah. I'm like, oh.
Or the juror who convicted Adnan, and she's like, well, you know, Jay was gonna go to jail anyways. Why would she? Why would?
She's like, he never went to jail. Oh.
I know.
That was rough.
Like,
Yeah.
all that guilt just falling on her.
Yeah.
But I do feel like moving forward, this appeal that happens next month, it's the wrong appeal. I feel like they're going to get a no on that.
Because what are they basing
The library,
it on?
just the library.
Just on
Asian
Asia's statement.
And that's not even to prove him innocent. It's to prove the lawyer as incompetent.
Yeah.
But that happens so much too, which is frustrating. They in different cases that I've seen, there's you just want to hand the whole book to the judge and say there's this and this and this, but they can't. They have to pick one thing and their strongest thing, and they look at past cases at what will be the strongest, and that all is very frustrating because it's his one chance.
Yeah.
The lady that worked in the library was a dumb shit too. When she's like, well, didn't you take records? And she's like, well, it was, pen and paper, whatever. So there's no chance you kept that.
Yeah, please. That was just a trick to kids.
You're like, you do realize somebody's in jail and a person died, and she laughed after every single thing that she said.
She
You're
wanted
like,
to be like, I'm a high school librarian. Right? I don't do any of the things you're telling me to do. I'm just
You're
getting by.
losing all your librarian
That's
followers.
true. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
I can't
All
believe
right.
you
I
just
can
said
feel
that.
them unfollowing.
There they go. There they
All
go.
your librarians.
Well, I've Mice and Men from 1984 also, so I've been holding on to that library book. So I'm not really one to talk to. No.
What I think, you think the best thing that came from Serial is that podcasts are now more out there. I think the best thing that came from Serial is that this conversation about wrongfully convicted people is getting out there.
Okay, Natalie.
I mean, it's great that your podcast is gaining some
Tune into our
fame.
show called Cadaver Dogs.
Cadaver Dogs is going to blow up, guys.
Yeah.
You're on your
But
way.
when you hear that 97% of cases end in a conviction, come on,
That's
there's
scary.
something wrong with
That's
that.
terrifying.
That's wrong. And
terrifying.
there's so much horrible detective work and police work, and that's what's so backwards that I learned listening to Serial that I really never knew before, was that I didn't know a detective's role was to find an avenue they want to take and then just set out
in
to
on
prove
it.
that.
Yeah.
That's
Like
what
I
it is.
thought it should be more
No.
weeding
Yeah.
out
Evidence and
things.
then
So it's
figure
very
it out.
Yeah.
disappointing.
Like you said, I guess the best thing about Serial is that we actually were brought along for one of those stories.
Yeah.
And I know I will be, because of Serial, and I'm a person who's been pretty staunch on thinking he's guilty the whole time, but I still do think that I will be more open to hearing, especially with what else is going on in the world. Like, I need to hear more before I'm just immediately saying, oh, because his parents showed up at the dance, that seems like that would mess up his mind. Like, I need to know more now. And
Or
I
you think detectives said it, a judge oversaw it, all these people are smarter than me, they know more than me, but no, it's all corrupt.
Yeah. Everyone has an agenda. Well, on that note.
All right, on a real light note, guys. Ending it on the
We're
soft
basically
part.
all going to get convicted.
Yeah, they're slowly telling the story of how we all left here and murdered someone.
Thank you to all our guests. That was our first. And
I just want to say,
probably,
from
yes.
what I know of you guys, I'll say, listen, the Bobby I know couldn't have killed anybody.
But I
such a
but
nice
Natalie,
guy,
but I have a
though.
question for
He's
you.
sweet.
I have a question for you. How well do you even know me?
No, you don't.
Like, how would you?
There's a
By the way,
radio
when
lab
she did
about
that,
this, by
when
the
he
way.
did that,
Yeah.
when he said to her, "How well do you even know me?" I stopped my car.
Yeah. How creepy was
Slowly
that?
pulled over and was just like, he's gonna say he murdered someone. That second was just like, and then he
You
was just,
don't know me.
But
I
I
was the thing that when he said that, how well do you know me? I thought she like,
mean, so well.
What about our late night talks?
I know, her feelings were hurt. They were hurt.
Oh,
Dairy
yeah.
cow.
What about,
Come on,
what
dairy
about
cow
what you
eyes.
didn't air? All that conversation.
Oh,
yeah.
hours and hours and hours of stuff. And then this last episode, they talked on Saturday.
I know. That's
They
what,
talked Saturday.
that was the thing that was so
They
great
talk
about
every
Serial was
day.
that it was actually
every day.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like things were happening, and there were people that got introduced and people that reached out to her and things like that. I thought it made it, just as a story, really compelling.
And if I don't ever get a call that starts off with that, like, you have a call from,
Yeah.
I'll be disappointed. 'Cause they're awesome.
I did like that at the beginning from Adnan. So.
Well, thank you to all our guests. That's the first and probably last episode of the 100 Serial. Maybe we'll catch up again next year.
All right.
All right.